let's go.
Okay, you're live.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this meeting of Monmouthshire County Council's Cabinet. I'm Richard John, Leader of the Council, and we'll start by inviting my Cabinet colleagues to come in and introduce themselves, and we'll start with Councillor Bob Greenland.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Bob Greenland, Joint Deputy Leader and responsible for governance and strategic planning.
Thank you. And Sarah.
Afternoon all, Councillor Sarah Jones, Cabinet Member for the Economy and Joint Deputy Leader.
Thank you. And Lisa.
Councillor Lisa Dimmock, Cabinet Member for Social Justice and Community Wellbeing.
Thank you. Jane.
Councillor Jane Pratt, Cabinet Member for Infrastructure and Neighbourhood Services.
Thank you. Phil.
Councillor Phil Murphy, Cabinet Member for Resources.
Thank you. And Penny.
Hello, I'm Penny Jones and I'm Cabinet Member for Social Services, Health and Safeguarding.
Thank you. And can I ask opposition leaders to introduce themselves? Have we got Councillor Petruni with us, leader of the Labour group? I can't see him on my screen. No, okay. Councillor Simon Howarth.
Yes, good afternoon, Leader, and good afternoon, Cabinet. Councillor Howarth, Leader of the Independent Group.
Thank you, welcome. And I can't see Councillor Joe Watkins on my screen, Leader of the Liberal.
Apologies.
Right, so let's move on then to apologies for absence. We've got apologies from Councillor Paul Pavia, Cabinet Member for Education, who's unable to join us today. And who else have we got apologies from?
Councillor Joe Watkins.
Okay, thank you very much. Any declarations of interest? If members could declare as and when. I should say also if officers could introduce themselves as they contribute to the meeting, that would be very helpful. Thank you. So we'll move then to today's reports, and we'll start with item 3A, which is the Revenue and Capital Monitoring Forecast Outturn Statement, month 2. And presenting that is Councillor Phil Murphy.
Yes, thank you, Leader. And as you say, it's month 2 outturn statement. And this report provides members with an updated forecast of the revenue and capital outturn positions for the current financial year as we see them at month 2. This report will also be considered by select committees as part of their normal scrutiny function. I think the basic situation can be summed up by 2.7 in the recommendations that talks about the extraordinary nature of the current council operating environment when you consider the effect of the pandemic, and we have to accept that it will be some time until the wider and lasting impact on service delivery fully establishes itself. It is true that we've had an awful lot of pressures associated with the pandemic, but underlying there are a lot of issues that we need to be considering. So it's great that Welsh Government, particularly the COVID Hardship Fund, has given us support throughout the pandemic, but there are considerable pressures in the system without those issues clouding the situation. We still need to be very vigilant over expenditure. Adults, children in several ways, ALN, whatever, the passenger transport unit, are real issues for us, giving considerable cause for concern. So within the recommendations today, they are that Cabinet recognises an overall net revenue forecast deficit at month 2 of 9.02 million. 6.48 million of that is directly associated with the extraordinary financial pressures attached to COVID-19, but a further 2.53 million relating to the pressures on the Council's core service delivery that I was talking about just now. And the forecast deficit on core services of that 2.53 million is managed through an immediate budget recovery plan. All COVID-19 associated cost pressures and income losses eligible, we would hope to be met by the Welsh Government COVID Hardship Fund, which was due to end on the 30th of September. We now understand is likely to be extended In fact, it will be extended to the 31st of March, although full details of that we haven't seen yet. However, there remains significant COVID-19 related cost pressures in the system, and income losses forecast after the end of September or 31st of March are likely to be some 2.5 million. The Council prudently set aside reserve funding at the end of 1920 and 2021, totaling 2.6 million for specific COVID-19 related pressures, which were yet to materialise. And in the event that funding commitments from Welsh Government fall short of meeting the additional expenditure and income losses incurred, recourses to this funding should be seen as we have that cover, but resources to this funding should be seen as an absolute last resort after exhausting all other possibilities. Cabinet will look to make strong recommendations to Welsh Government for further clarity on funding for the ongoing pressures. As I said, they were due to run out in September, but now need to be March, in the form of continuing to support to respond to the direct impact of the pandemic, but just as importantly, the wider and longer lasting indirect impact of the pandemic on council services, particularly where this is now becoming evident in the areas of homelessness, children's services, adult social care and children's additional learning needs, as I was alluding to before. The ongoing risk of the awaited outcome of pay negotiations is another concern for both teaching and non-teaching staff, and this will present a further pressure if pay awards are over and above the 1% budgeted for. Current indications are that we will see at the very least a 1.75% increase in pay for teachers with effect from September, and a full year effect of at least 1.5% increase in non-teaching staff. No compensating funding is anticipated in respect of that. We need to note the forecast 95% delivery of the budgeted mandate savings and the implicit remedial action and savings included in the financial outturn to compensate for the circa 5% savings, 229,000, reported as delayed or unachievable by service managers. And to note the extent of the forecast movement in schools reserve usage, which was being supported this year by a significant and unprecedented late grant support provided by Welsh Government to schools at the end of 2021. It really did put schools in a very more sustainable position than they have been at late. We're also asked to consider the forecast capital outturn spend of 79.2 million, which is outlined in Appendix 1. Notice the difficulties in forecasting capital expenditure plans so early in the financial year, and the probability that slippage will materialise, as it always does, as the year progresses due to the ongoing restrictions and again the impact in relation to COVID-19. We're also asked to approve the capital budget revisions listed in the report, resulting from the notification of external capital grant awards to the value of 3.58 million. So the 21-22 budget was set against a backdrop of an unprecedented period of uncertainty, both in local government and in the wider context. The pandemic has required the Council to incur significant additional pressure, for example, costs relating to infection control measures, safeguarding the public and employees, and support for elderly and vulnerable residents. In addition, the income losses have also been substantial during the period, where services have either been closed or have experienced significant reductions in demand or footfall due to the restrictions in place. So, Leader, I know I've summarised most of the recommendations there, but they do cover the gist of this report, which goes into considerable further detail, which, as I said earlier, will be examined by the scrutiny committees. So I shall stop there.
Phil, thank you for that. Pete Davis, you're the author of this report. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Thank you, Leader. Not an awful lot to add to what Councillor Murphy's added. I mean, the current in-year situations obviously being summarised by Councillor Murphy. Obviously challenges that obviously presented significantly in the current year, both in terms of COVID and away from COVID. And obviously with the weather eye equally on budget setting for next year. So, you know, we're clearly as officers and clearly as well and informally with Cabinet looking to bring some of those conversations through at the moment in terms of understanding. I guess it comes to it back to a point of the extent of the recovery action that we need to take, and that is a tricky one because of some of the relative uncertainties, I guess, aided in part by, I think, the comment that was made about Welsh Government's decision to extend the COVID hardship fund to the end of March. I guess I'm still being clearly a Section 151 officer with an approach of prudence being taken at all times. You know, until I've seen the money come in to cover us fully for costs and income losses, then, you know, it's only at that point that I'm happy. So a healthy dose of skepticism until that delivers itself. But clearly, as Phil's highlighted, we've got quite a few pressures away from COVID that are working their way through and probably more attach themselves to, I think, demand pressures that we're starting to see play through the business, which clearly aren't just going to be an issue for us in the current year, will equal to the next year and be a challenge. Budget setting, as I said. So, yeah, not a need to necessarily concern ourselves. I think it's good to get these forecasts out early and on the table, and it allows us to obviously go away and understand, as I said, the extent of the recovery measures that we need to take. Thank you.
Brill, thank you very much. Well, the raise hand function is in the chat bar now if anyone wants to come in. I mean, it's been such a challenging time, hasn't it, the last few months, and you know we certainly welcome the COVID hardship fund, and if this is going to be extended to March, then that's absolutely something Welsh Government should look to do, and that would be very welcome. Jane, you want to come in?
Thank you very much, Leader, and can I thank Councillor Murphy and Peter Davis for this excellent report, which I fully support. I would just like to make the point that moving forward, I hope that Welsh Government will give us as much prior notice as possible when grant funds do become available, especially in my portfolio where it takes time to plan works, to go to tender and then deliver. And we really do need to have plenty of lead time for that if we're really going to make, you know, the best job of it that we can. And I don't think that's always been the case. You know, in the last year, it's been really put tremendous pressure on us as a small authority with this lack of forward planning and strategy by Welsh Government. So I hope that will change in the coming year.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point, and you know that would be welcome. I can't see any other hands raised. So Phil, was there anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, can I just come in and say that remiss of me, I neglected.
Hang on a minute, Phil. We're just sorting a technical issue. There we go. Go for it.
I neglected to mention Jonathan Davis in this, who's done an incredible amount of work on producing this report, and you know, I just wanted to record my thanks for that.
Brill, thank you. Yes, Pete and Jonathan, thank you so much for your efforts and contribution. And you know, we don't underestimate the significant volume of work that goes on behind the scenes in making this work. So thank you very much. I'll just reiterate the recommendations of this report just before we go to the vote, which are that we recognise the overall net revenue forecast deficit of month 2 of £9 million, which can be attributed to a forecast deficit of £6.5 million, which is directly associated with some of those extraordinary financial pressures during the pandemic, with a further £2.5 million relating to pressures on the council's core service delivery. the forecast deficit on the core service delivery of £2.5 million is managed through an immediate budget recovery plan, that Cabinet can be reasonably assured, based on continued dialogue with Welsh Government, that the COVID Hardship Fund will continue from the, will be funded to the end of September 2021. That we note that there remain significant COVID-related cost pressures and income losses forecast after the end of September 21, currently estimated at £2.5 million, from which we have no guaranteed funding commitment from Welsh Government, and that we will seek further clarity on that from Welsh Government. That we recognise the ongoing risk of the awaited outcome of pay negotiations for both teaching and non-teaching staff, and that this could present further pressures. That we note the forecast 95% delivery of the budgeted mandated savings set out in Appendix 3, that we note the extent of forecast movements in schools, which is set out in Appendix 1, and that we consider the forecast capital outturn spend of £79 million set out in Appendix 1, noting the difficulties in forecasting capital expenditure plans quite this early in the financial year, and that we approve the capital budget revisions which are set out in Appendix 4 of this report, which result from the notification of external capital grants to the value of just over £3.5 million. So those are the recommendations. The vote icon should appear in the chat bar in a couple of moments' time. There we go. Right, can you all vote on that now, please?
I can't.
And do let me know if anyone's having technical issues. I'm happy to take
I'm for it.
a vote for. Okay.
Thank you. I'll submit it.
Has everyone else been able to vote? Okay.
Yeah, there's 6 on here.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Brill. Okay.
Okay.
There we go. That's unanimous. Thank you all very much for that one. Right, so that is approved. We'll move now to the next item, 3.2, which is the Regional Collaboration Report, Gwent Public Service Board. Now, I'll briefly talk you through this report. The Monmouthshire Public Service Board was set up following the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, which put a statutory responsibility on public bodies to act to improve the economic, social, environmental and cultural well-being of their area by contributing to the achievement of well-being goals. Now, for many of our key partners, South Wales Fire and Rescue, Gwent Police, Natural Resources Wales, Aneurin Bevan Local Health Board, the existence of 5 separate public service boards has meant a lot of unnecessary duplication. So for some time, officers have been developing proposals for a single Gwent-wide public service board, and there's been considerable engagement and buy-in from each of the existing boards and representatives from the statutory public bodies under the direction of G10. So this is the informal collaboration between the 10 statutory public bodies in the former Gwent area. And a number of opportunities have been identified that could be pursued through a Gwent-wide public service board, such as improving the economic, social and environmental well-being across the region, collaborating on administrative and back office activities to free up more officer time to focus on delivering the things that really matter to our residents, enabling partners to sit on one public service board rather than 5 to make more effective use of their capacity, ensuring a more strategic and consistent overview of some of the legislative responsibilities that sit with public service boards, such as the Crime and Disorder Act, Violence Against Women, Domestic Abuse and Sexual Violence, and the Children's Act. We think that a strengthened focus on regional activity on issues that affect all of us equally across Gwent, such as climate change, mental health and obesity, could make a real step towards improving the well-being of our citizens. And it's also a catalyst for a regional wellbeing assessment and a regional wellbeing plan to focus on both delivery and accountability. There are some challenges related to setting up a Gwent-wide public service board, and some of those are set out in 3.7 in the report, including regional scrutiny, oversight, and the governance, the regional governance arrangements. But there's a shared view that this is a collaboration that will be a significant contribution towards the achievement of shared wellbeing goals across all parts of Gwent. So this is something that we've been pushing for some time, and we're very pleased to see this report come forward today. Can I ask Richard Jones, who I think is with us, if he wants to add anything to that?
Good afternoon, thank you. Thank you, Leader. Richard Jones, Performance Manager for Monmouthshire Council. I think, Leader, you've set out the work that's gone on and the opportunities that move into a regional public service board presents well. I think obviously the report sets out some of the arrangements for the regional public service board that are being developed at the moment. I think the only other thing I would add for Cabinet is obviously, as well as the development of the regional arrangements, there is subsequent development of the local Monmouthshire partnership arrangements as well. And obviously an important part of the development has been ensuring there remains a focus on delivery of projects which are locally area specific in Monmouthshire and maintaining local accountability, obviously within working and linking into the Gwent-wide public service board as set out in the paper.
Fab, thank you very much. Well, the raise hand function is in the chat bar if colleagues want to come in. I can't see any raised hands, so yes, Bob Greenland.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I have to say that the Public Service Board, as far as most members, and I'm sure as most members of the public are concerned, has been very much in the background, not recognising what on earth it does or even if it exists. And I think this is a failure that we've had in the past. I would like to see some scrutiny from within the council of the work and perhaps some reporting of the work of the board in the future. But I certainly think it should be added to one of the select committee's tasks to keep an eye on the work of the board, this new joint board into the future. But yes, this move is much overdue, and I welcome this new collaboration right across the larger Gwent area.
Thank you very much. I can see a raised hand from Simon Howarth. Do you want to express a view on this report?
Yes, and thank you, Leader. I think it would be important, as I've been with this from the start as well. Many members who were with us are new members. It's been slightly drier, I think, Leader, and I do agree with Bob's comments there. It's time for a new direction. I think many of us said that at the start about, where is this going to go? So yeah, I would agree that we need a new direction. But on Bob's point about making sure that we actually scrutinise as a council as well, making sure what is happening there is so important. Because all that time we've spent in aligning this, because that's what we have been doing, is aligning it for where it wants to go, is now where it wants to go. It is important that we do keep an eye on it. So I would recommend Cabinet have a strong response to the direction that it goes and what input we would have as a council and as members as well. And I think that's so important. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Simon. I can't see any other hands raised, so I will move to the recommendation then, which is that we endorse the proposal to create a Gwent-wide public service board and the subsequent development of partnership arrangements here in Monmouthshire. The vote will appear in the chat bar in the next couple of moments. There it is. Can I ask you all to vote now, please? Thank you very much. So that's 7 votes in favour, so that's unanimous. Thank you all very much. Now, the final report we've got on today's agenda is quite sensitive in terms of security arrangements. So the proposal is that we move into private session for this final report because of the evidence we've been presented recommending against public disclosure. Is everyone content to move into private session?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, in which case we will say goodbye to the public, and can I thank members of the public who have taken an interest in our deliberations, and wish you well over the summer. Please do enjoy everything that Monmouthshire has to offer, and our next meeting will be broadcast on Wednesday the 1st of September at 3 o'clock. So until then, thank you all very much for joining us, and we look forward to your future engagement at our next meeting. Thank you very much.